Before the desert could speak, the child did. A small voice tearing through the heat, raw with fear, carrying a plea no man could unhear. "My mother, please. She's tied to a rock." The words rode the air like a gunshot, and somewhere between the burning sky and the endless dust, a wandering cowboy felt his long-buried past stir awake. The afternoon sun in the Arizona Territory showed no mercy. It bore down from a cloudless sky, heavy and relentless, pressing the land flat beneath its glare. Heat rose in trembling waves from the pale ground, pulling sweat from the skin and stealing moisture from the mouth, until even swallowing felt like work. The country stretched wide and empty, broken only by scattered mesquite and brittle brush, their twisted shapes clawing at the horizon. Dust hung in the distance like a thin veil. Along a faint wagon track, barely more than 2 lines in the dirt, a lone rider moved at an unhurried pace. His horse was lean, the kind built for distance rather than beauty, its head low, nostrils flaring as it drew in the hot air. In the saddle sat a man of about 38, tall and broad through the shoulders, his frame hardened by years under open skies. His face was weather-worn, jaw dark with stubble, eyes carrying the quiet weight of things long survived and never truly left behind. The brim of his hat sagged where time and rain had bent it. His long coat bore the marks of hard use, its fabric scarred, one sleeve frayed where a past fight had torn it open. His name was not one often spoken anymore. Once he had been a soldier, infantry first, then scout. He had learned to endure hunger, heat, and silence. He had marched where the ground ran red and watched men fall whose voices still visited his sleep. When the war finally ended, he did not go home. There was no home left to go to. No family waited. No land called him back. So he drifted from trail to trail, from fire to fire, riding places that led nowhere, sleeping beneath skies that offered no comfort. His only purpose now was survival, measured day to day, mile to mile. He avoided towns, kept clear of law and quarrel. He carried his grief the way some men carried a Bible, close and unspoken. On this day he rode without destination, his thoughts set only on finding water before dusk. That was when motion burst from the brush ahead. A boy ran out into the open, barefoot, his thin frame shaking, his steps uneven with exhaustion. He could not have been more than 8 or 9. His shirt hung loose and torn, dust streaked across his skin, his chest heaving as though each breath might be his last. The horse startled, lifting its head sharply. The cowboy hauled the reins back hard, stopping just short of trampling the child. The boy threw up his arms, panic wide in his eyes. "Ah, please," he gasped, the words splitting under the strain of fear and thirst. He bent forward, clutching his side, words spilling out in broken pieces. "My mother, please. You must help. She's tied." The cowboy studied him in silence. Years of soldiering had trained him to weigh every sound, every movement. Children had been used as bait before. Bandits had learned that a frightened face could draw a man into an ambush. But there was something in the boy's eyes that could not be rehearsed. His terror was too naked, his desperation too real. The cowboy swung down from the saddle, boots striking the dry earth with a dull thud. He crouched until he was level with the boy, his shadow cutting the glare. "Where?" His voice was rough, little used. The boy lifted a trembling arm and pointed back toward the scrub and rock beyond. "This way." They left her. His breath came ragged. Each word pulled from him as if it cost something. The cowboy straightened slowly. For a moment he considered turning away. Trouble was never far behind such pleas. The woman was a stranger. The boy was a risk. But the war had left him with one truth he had never managed to bury. Some things could not be ignored. Not if a man meant to keep what little remained of himself. He gave a single nod and motioned the boy forward. They moved quickly over the baked ground. The boy stumbling now and then, but never stopping. Fear lending his legs what strength they had left. The cowboy followed close, eyes cutting the horizon, his hand resting near the worn revolver at his belt. Instinct rode with him. The clearing came into view after a short climb. At its center stood a pale rock, bleached by years of sun. Against it, bound by thick rope, was a woman. The sight struck him harder than he expected. She was young, perhaps in her mid-20s. Ron's skin darkened and angry under the burn of the sun. Long black hair clung to her face, wet with sweat. The ropes cut deep into her wrists, carving raw lines into her flesh. Her deerskin dress was torn at the shoulder and hip, beadwork dulled beneath dust and grit. Her head hung forward, lips cracked, her breathing shallow and uneven. She looked half gone already, not merely abandoned but punished, left with intent. The boy cried out and ran to her. "Mama!" The cowboy closed the distance in long strides, drawing his knife. The blade worked fast, slicing through the rough fibers. The ropes fell away. Her arms dropped limp, and she slumped forward. He caught her before she hit the ground, surprised by how little she weighed, alarmed by the heat of her skin against his chest. She felt fragile, like something already slipping. He lifted her carefully, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her back, and carried her to the edge of the clearing, where a mesquite offered thin shade. There, he lowered her gently, propping her against the trunk. He pulled his canteen free and tipped it to her lips. At first, the water spilled, her mouth unresponsive. He waited, then tried again, patient, steady. Her lips parted. She swallowed shallowly. Her eyelids fluttered. For a moment, her dark eyes met his, fevered, clouded, but not empty. There was strength still there, stubborn and unbroken. She did not speak. She did not need to. He soaked a rag and pressed it to her wrists, easing the raw skin. She winced but did not pull away. The boy knelt close, whispering in Apache, the words soft and urgent. The cowboy could not understand them, but he knew their meaning: comfort, promise, love. He laid a blanket across her shoulders, old and thin, but enough to shield her from the sun. As he crouched there, he thought of what he had stepped into. Whoever had done this would not take kindly to a stranger undoing their work. But as he watched the boy's shaking hands clutch his mother's dress, as he listened to the faint pull of her breath, he knew he would not leave. His mission had been to endure. Now without ceremony it had shifted. He had bound himself to them the moment his knife cut those ropes. He settled on one knee nearby, the sun still heavy overhead. He would stay long enough to see if she lived, long enough to keep the boy from being alone in a land that did not forgive. The woman leaned back against the mesquite, her chest lifting in shallow, uneven pulls. Her eyes stayed open now, unfocused, as though the glare still burned behind her lids. The boy pressed against her side, his hand gripping her arm, unwilling to release her even for a breath. The cowboy watched her carefully, reading the signs the way he once read the faces of men on long marches. He dampened the cloth again and drew it gently across her face, cooling the red heat of her skin. The boy murmured to her, his voice thin but steady. At last her lips moved. "Enough," she whispered. "No more!" Her English was broken but clear. He nodded. Too much water too quickly could kill as surely as none at all. His eyes drifted to the pale rock. Who had done this? Not bandits. They would have taken what they wanted and left her in the dirt. This was punishment, the kind carried out by people who liked to dress cruelty as order. He had seen it before. The reason did not matter. She was alive. He had freed her. That was enough. The boy finally looked up at him, fear swimming in his eyes. Will she live? The cowboy studied the woman's face, the stubborn set of her mouth, the way she fought to sit straighter even now. "She's strong," he said at last. "She'll pull through." He rose and went to his horse, untying the saddlebag. He returned with dried meat and hard bread, setting them beside her. He broke a piece, softened it with water, and gave it to the boy first. Then to her. Only after they ate did he take a small piece himself. Silence settled again, heavy with questions. Where had they come from? Who would come looking? He did not ask. Survival came first. Shade, water, rest. The woman's hands trembled as she ate. He steadied the bread for her, without touching more than her wrist. She chewed slowly, eyes downcast, a look he knew too well. Shame. He said nothing. Sometimes presence was answer enough. As the sun dipped, shadows stretched long across the clearing. They could not remain there. The rock was too close, too visible. He thought of the canyon beyond the ridge, the narrow stream he had passed the day before. He crouched and spoke plainly. "We can't stay. There's water ahead. You walk." She met his eyes, held them, then nodded once. When she tried to rise, her legs faltered. She steadied herself against the tree. The boy slipped beneath her arm, offering what little strength he had. The cowboy stayed close, ready. He draped the blanket across her shoulders again, then led them away from the clearing, leaving the pale rock behind. As they moved into the lengthening shadows, his jaw tightened. For years, he had ridden with no purpose but to keep breathing. Now, without asking him, something else had claimed him. He would see this woman and her boy through the night. The path to the canyon wound through broken ground. Their pace slow, her steps uncertain. The boy clung to her. The cowboy walked ahead, scanning the distance, the desert quiet but never empty. By the time they reached the edge, the sky had turned deep red, the sun low. He guided them down a narrow cut in the stone, one hand ready when her footing slipped. At the bottom, a stream ran cool and clear, cottonwoods leaning over its narrow bank. The boy gasped and rushed forward, dropping to his knees. The cowboy caught his shoulder. Slow. The boy obeyed, sipping carefully. The woman sank beside the water, trembling. The cowboy filled the canteen and offered it in measured turns. Color crept faintly back into her face. And in that quiet, with evening settling and water whispering over stone, the boy spoke. They said she stole bread. His voice shook. She didn't. They just wanted her gone. The cowboy's jaw clenched. He set about gathering wood. When the fire took, he warmed meat and shared it. Night fell heavy. Coyotes called somewhere far off. He loosened his revolver and kept it close. At last, the woman spoke. Why help? He looked at her, at the boy curled near her side, and answered low. Leaving you there would have made me no better than them. She held his gaze, then nodded. No thanks, no words. But something passed between them. Respect. The boy slept. Her breathing eased. The cowboy sat with his back to a rock, watching the fire sink low. Tomorrow would bring questions and danger, but for now, they were alive. And he was no longer alone. Morning lifted itself slowly into the canyon, pale light spilling over the rock walls and touching the stream like a blessing. The boy was the first awake, crouched by the water, washing dust from his face. The woman stirred beneath the blanket. Her breath deeper now, her color stronger. Pain still lived in her wrists, but life had returned to her eyes. The cowboy had already been up, feeding the last coals, scanning the ridges. He knelt beside her and held out the canteen. She drank, steady this time. When she looked up at him, there was no fear left. There. They will look for me, she said quietly. He nodded. Then we won't be here. They did not return toward the town. The cowboy led them deeper into the canyon, where the walls tightened and cottonwoods grew thick. He showed the boy how to walk without leaving clear tracks, how to step on stone instead of sand. By noon they reached a narrow stretch of green where the stream widened and disappeared into reeds. It was hidden, safe. The woman could walk on her own now. She stood straighter. When she turned to face him, the shame was gone. Only strength remained. My name is Naya, she said. This is Tahoe. He tipped his hat slightly. I'm Jonah. It was the first time he had spoken his name in years. They shared the last of the food. The boy laughed when the water soaked his boots. The sound startled Jonah more than any gunshot ever had. When the sun reached its highest point, Jonah tightened his saddle. Naya watched him, understanding before he spoke. You saved us, she said. He shook his head. No, you survived. He left them with his spare blanket, a small knife, and directions to a distant Apache trading camp beyond the mesas. When he mounted, the boy ran forward and hugged his leg hard. Jonah rested a hand briefly on the child's head. Then he turned his horse and rode. But this time, he did not ride empty.